let's bring in a new guest here. We've not had him before on the program, but he is the host of the Politics podcast. Justin Robert Young joins me here on the U.S. Report. Justin, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining me. And I want to start out tonight by talking about the sad story, this devastating story out of Minneapolis this week, which saw 2 children killed, 17 people injured in horrific scenes. Now, I spoke about this earlier in the show, how the media has really skewed its reporting on the shooter, Robert Westman, trying to obscure, I think, the transgender angle to this and the mental illness connection to that. What have you made of the way this horrible story has been covered?
You know, I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is that both the media and even Democratic politicians who are very, very careful with their language have actually been referring to the shooter as a him, which is something that I don't think that they would have done a few years ago. They have referred to Robert and not Robin, which was the name that he was going by right up until this attack. But in general, there is an uncomfortable silence that happens oftentimes with stories like this, where if there is not hay to be made politically about a shooter's motivations, then it just kind of gets memory hold, which is one of the uglier elements of American politics in general, in my opinion, especially when you have something that, you know, the destruction of life this young. It's really ugly when political points are made on top of it.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing that really shocked me, because I played a clip earlier where the American ABC, they said, oh, well, the shooter had Donald Trump's name written on, you know, his guns, but it said kill Donald Trump. And I feel like had this person been, you know, an explicitly right-wing person, you know, committing some right-wing kind of hate crime, we would hear so much more about this, and this story would kick off, you know, what do we call it, a national conversation that would run for weeks, if not months.
And that's really where I think I would hope that if there is a world where the media gets better, that we can agree killers like this very, very rarely, if ever, have opinions that match upon the mainstream of political thought. They're usually disturbed in some bizarre way that really takes them out of what we would understand of even the left-right spectrum of modern mainstream thought. And what I think is better is if we just leave all of that out of there and understand that these are seriously deranged people, and this is a mental illness question first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean, Justin, one of the interesting things here, which you've sort of touched on, which brings me to my next topic here, is this whole way the left manipulates language, and everybody manipulates language. But we've now had a story this week that Columbia Law School has had a consultant come in and tell students not to use terms like, you know, grandfathering or crazy uncle. Meanwhile, you've got the Democrat Party. They've given Democrats a whole list of terms they shouldn't use, including privilege, violence, dialogue, triggering, microaggression, holding space, body shaming, subverting norms, and all sorts of other things. Tell me, why is it that the left seems much more concerned about policing language than actually, you know, making people's lives better?
You actually left one out there at the DNC meeting in Minneapolis this week. There was a presentation to show that protecting the peace polled better than the phrase tough on crime. That tough on crime was bad to use politically, which, I mean, if that person is not paid by the Republican Party, they should probably cash a check from them for the level of damage that they are doing internally to the Democrats. There's a saying here in politics in America that, you know, there are only 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and the Democrats believing that this can be solved with messaging. For whatever reason, the staff of the Democratic Party and the people that make it up believe that there is nothing that can be either done or undone if you just say the magic words. And they spend so much time and energy not only policing themselves, but as we saw over the last 10 years, policing others where they had authority to.
Yeah, I don't know, Justin. I think one of the phrases that we use on this show an awful lot is 1984 was a warning, not an instruction manual. But, meanwhile, in the real world here, the new poll here is saying that President Trump has actually got a 45% approval rating, which runs, counter to what a lot of the headlines would say. And funnily enough, it turns out that if you actually compare President Trump and President Obama at this same time in their second terms, you can see that Trump is actually out in front. Look, I mean, whether or not you're a Trump lover or a Trump hater or a big MAGA guy, this would seem to suggest that the president is not doing the horrible job that, you would think he was if you just read the New York Times and the Washington Post.
You know what's interesting is that obviously internationally, or at least whenever I've traveled internationally, there's a very specific lens on American politics post-Trump. Not to say that they were ever particularly friendly to Republicans in the past, but with Trump, it is kind of ratcheted up to another level. In America, he is looked at as more popular. Even in the mainstream media, you'll see more stories that he's more popular than he was in his first term, which is odd because usually in American politics, a president is as popular as they're ever going to be in their first term and then sink to a lower level in their second term. And you saw that with Clinton, with Obama, and with George W. Bush, surely, but he had a war that was weighing him down. With Trump, it's kind of the opposite. The longer he's been around, the more people in public polling, and I would say even in the media lens to a certain extent, have understood that he has a very, very, not only a special connection with his base, but that base in the coalition of the Republican Party is growing. And that does have to be reckoned with. If you're Donald Trump and you're the White House, you look at that number and you say, well, they usually undercount us by about 3 points anyway. So really we're at 48 or 49, we'll take it.